Hi, this is Matt Cederberg from T-Splines, and this tutorial will show how to use T-Splines version 2.3 for Rhino to make a chair. And this is the kind of the outline of the chair that we're going to try to hit. So kind of an injection molding lawn chair. And let's go ahead and get into it. So just as a little bit of background on this tutorial, this is one that we've used for a long time with our T-Splines live training classes. And when we recently redid the manual, we took this out, so we're excited to make it available to everyone online. One other bit of introduction about this tutorial. This is an advanced tutorial. There's some techniques that we'll get into that that are not beginning techniques. So if you are just barely learning T-Splines, you might want to try out some of our other tutorials, but if you've worked in T-Splines for a while and want to make some more complex shapes, then hopefully this will be useful for you. Also, just one other word of introduction. I haven't actually worked through this for a while, and so I'm making this without practice. I'm doing that on purpose, so hopefully I'll make some mistakes, and we'll see how we can get out of those. But when we have a complex shape like this that we want to make in T-Splines, then one of the first things to do is to break it down into more basic areas and make those, and then figure out how to join it all together. And again, the joining it all together is one of the unique things that T-Splines gives you to turn it into one single model instead of a bunch of models that are blended together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is lay down some curves, and I'll just turn on my, I've already made these curves up in this layer. These curves are just going to roughly be the kind of the outline of the seat part of the chair. And we're just going to make half of this chair, and then we'll mirror it across with Symmetry. This is how we'll do the working. So let me go ahead and actually hide this reference wireframe and just start with these. These are just NURBS curves. And I'll just loft them using the Rhino Loft command. So here is the Rhino Loft command. And I think I'll just do a normal loft and hit OK. And then let me just hide those curves so they get out of the way. So here is my Rhino NURB surface, and I'll turn on my T-Splines heads-up display so I can see that's the surface. And I'll just convert that to T-Splines. I'll just pop this out and leave it here. Oops. Let's see. Let's try that one more time. I'm not sure why that's not showing up. Maybe it's a problem with my video recording software. Okay, there we go. So we'll just convert this to a T-Spline. And so now that's a T-Spline surface. So making the seat's pretty simple. To make the legs of the chair, we're going to use a different technique. There's a number of techniques we could do for this, but I'm going to introduce a new one. And what I'm going to do is make some cylinders, and I'll let's see. I'll have this radius be 4. I'll have the end of the cylinder be, let's see, 40 centimeters high. And here's this T-Spline cylinder. Now to make this into the chair legs, I'm going to want to delete half of the cylinder. And with T-Splines, the way that we delete half of things is by turning on we go to face mode, and I'm just going to marquee select to select half of these faces, and to hit the delete key, or also the delete icon. So now I have, I've just got half of a cylinder here. To get a rounded bottom here, one way to do that in T-Splines is to change to edge mode and select these edges, and then I'm going to extrude them down. And again, there's two ways to do the extrusion. I can just either click on this icon and extrude and then pull them down, or I could have held down the Alt key and dragged the manipulator. But in any case, I've got these extruded down now. And now after I pull them down a little bit, I will just use the merge command to merge those two edges. And you can see they're pretty far apart, but the merge command just, if I have them both pre-selected, then it will just merge them together and have them meet there in the middle. So this is joined up, and I've just got a hole here to fill. So I'll use the fill hole command. And now you can see, if I undo that, you can see right here when I have this interior hole in my model, there's all these creases going all over the place. It doesn't look very nice. But as soon as I get that hole filled up, then everything smooths out and the model's in a more finished state, and it looks quite nice. Now the option that T-Splines gives you, I mean, if we backed up to the cylinder before we did all this, I mean, you could just put, I don't know, part of a sphere on there and boolean it together, and it could look great. Or there's other ways you can do this with NURBS, but I'm just going to redo my steps. What T-Splines buys you is now this is a surface you can move around. So if you want to change the how pointy it is on the bottom, you can just explore shapes like this. I'm going to do the make uniform command by right-clicking here on the edit layout. That just kind of spaces my isocurves a little bit better and gives me more kind of a more flexible surface to work with. But there we go. So there's the bottom of my one leg. Now to position these, there's a few different ways you can do it. What I'll do is just use the let's see, some reference curves, and then I'll use a Rhino command called let's see, what's that called again? Orient 3 points. So here I have my T-spline, and to use the Orient 3 points command, let's see, Orient 3 points. I'll select the T-spline to orient and hit enter, and I'll say copy equals yes. And then here's my reference points. First I'll hit the reference points on the actual T-spline, so point 1, point 2, and point 3. Then here's my target points. I'm just going to click in the same areas as my reference points. So target point 1, target point 2, and target point 3 here at the bottom. You can see it makes a copy of the T-spline over here. So now I'll just do another copy here. Target point 1, 2, and 3. Another copy of my T-spline. Hit enter. And now I've got my copy T-splines here. I can just hit this guy and I'll just hide him because he's get him out of the way. So now I've got my legs and the main part of my seat, and now I want to make my armrest. We'll do that exactly the same way we did the main part of the seat. We just have some curves here, and I'll just select them and loft them using the Rhino Loft command. Nothing special there. Again, I'll hide the curves and convert this to T-splines. So now we've got we have the three main parts of our model, and now the tricky part is going to be seeing how to match them all up, and this is really going to be the main part of this tutorial. And first of all, let me just point out that not every time that you make a T-spline model are you going to have the isocurves lined up perfectly. With this example, they line up pretty well, and we'll see that as we go along, but there will be, every time you're trying to join your T-spline together, there is a certain amount of guessing and then undoing and guessing another thing. And that's just part of making sure it hooks up the right way. So we'll explore a few of those options now. One thing just to double check to make sure before you proceed, first of all, you'll want to save your model. And then the second thing that I always recommend is to check to make sure that your undo buffer is sufficiently large. So if you go in the Rhino options and click on General, I have my minimum number of undos set as 15 and then the max memory used at 200. Their default for Rhino I think is 1 undo and max memory used of 10. Your T-Spline will fill up a little bit more of the undo buffer than your normal Rhino surfaces, so you'll want to increase this, because the last thing you want to do is get to a point, decide you don't like it, try to undo and not be able to undo. So if you just increase that to those settings, then you should be fine. Okay, so now let's figure out how we're going to join this all together. And one thing to pay a lot of attention to is the flow of the isocurves and how they connect together. And so one thing I'm going to start out with doing is making a bridge. So let's use the bridge command, and you can bridge faces, but you can also bridge edges. So I'm going to change my selection mode to edges. I'm just going to bridge these edges to these edges. I'm going to show a preview, kind of see how that's going to come down here. One segment, no twist, and I'll go ahead and hit enter. You can see that that just creates a new bridge that will join these two surfaces together. Another thing that you can see is, just like when we were in the middle of trying to get our chair leg set up and we had a hole in the middle and there were creases going into my model, I'm getting the same thing here as I'm doing this bridge, because it's not completed here yet. That's sometimes kind of distracting, so I'm going to go to box mode by hitting smooth toggle, and just so this way it's just easier to pay attention to the topology of the model, or how everything fits together, which is what is really important at this stage anyway. So I'll stay in box mode for a while, so I'm not distracted by any intermediate creases, and I can just pay attention to the topology. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and bridged those together. I have, let's see, I still need to kind of work with the model over here, join this together, and whatnot. So let me reference back to the reference wireframe that I have here, and just kind of see what type of geometry I really wanted to hit. Now, in looking at this, I can see that my initial seat of the chair is not completely built out to the edge of where I want it to be. I'd really like part of it to kind of come up more here on the side. So one way that I can do that is extrude out some of these edges. So let me go ahead and hit the Alt key and just extrude this out. And so you can see when with this extrusion, it's kind of pulling up the surface kind of more along there to get that shape. Oops. Okay, so now I've got that done, and now what do I want to do? Let's take a look back here. You can see what we've done up here is we've got some nice flow of all these lines coming, all these isocurves coming down along the front. So it'd be ideal to get the same thing going on over here. And I honestly don't know if I have enough isocurves to get good flow here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extrude this edge one more time. I was holding down the Alt key and dragging this out. And as I recall, what this will let me do is now to take these two edges and these two edges and bridge them, so that now I have, again, some nice flow coming back here down the back. What I'm kind of leaving exposed right here is kind of this concave corner, and hopefully I'll be able to resolve that as I work over here later. Let's turn off the reference wireframe to get that out of the way. But let's see. Let me turn on my control points and just move this out a little bit so we can kind of see how that flow is going. You can see I'm not paying a lot of attention though right now as to what exactly my surface looks like. I'm mainly concerned with getting the topology right. and then I'll move those control points again later. So one other thing to note is that my surface back is kind of coming up and it's kind of pinching this off, and it would be great to kind of unweld this and open it up, and so it can flow both down the leg as well as here to the main part of the chair. So if I want to unweld this, what I can do is select this edge, and I can right click on the merge edges command so I can unweld that edge. I can also find this up here in the T-Splines drop down menu, unweld edges. And what that will do when I unweld this edge, if I turn on my control points, grab this control point, let's see, it looks like it's that one. It's hard to tell which control point you're dragging sometimes. But it just unwelds that edge, so now I have two control points where I used to have one. Let me just undo that one more time. Okay, so right now this is just one control point. One control point, I can move it, it stays together. But if I select this edge, and let's see, hit unweld, then now when I go to control points, if I marquee select, then I have two control points here. So if I select one of them and move it to see which one I have, okay, it's that one. Then I can drag the other one out, and now I have an unwelded edge. So I can pull this back and see now what I'm doing is I'm kind of opening up this chair so that it can flow down here as well. So again, talking about flow, I want to be able to get isocurves that kind of line up and flow down along here. And I don't have enough right now, so I'll go to my edge mode, select this edge, hold down the Alt key to extrude this, and now I have an edge that I can weld here. So let's see what happens if that I can merge, or one more time, bridge. So let's try that bridge command. And so I have a new face. Okay. So I bridged this together and I made a new face here. So what this is leaving me with is a 5-sided face here. So I have a couple options that I can do. One, I can just fill this hole, and it fills in that 5-sided face fine. Let me toggle the smooth mode and see what my model's looking like. It will probably look pretty bad because I've still got these creases kind of coming through. It doesn't really look that bad to have that 5-sided face there. You can see again these creases coming from these concave corners, and those will heal later. So I could just leave this like this. Let me undo a couple times and see what some of my other options are. Of course, you always want to have 4-sided faces as often as possible because they'll always be smoother. So if I undo even this bridge, let's see what some other options are that I might have. So what bridge does is bridge actually makes a new face here. But if instead I want to just weld these control points together, then it will not make a new face and it will change the topology here. So let's see what happens if I do that. So weld control points. Again, if I select the one point and then another point, we'll move the first point to the second point. We'll try that again. One point to the second point. Okay, now that I did that weld, I'm left with a 4-sided face here because I didn't create a new face to add another side to this hole. So with this 4-sided face, let's go ahead and fill that hole and see what that looks like. If I go to smooth mode again by hitting smooth tab. Okay, to be honest, that doesn't, right now that looks pretty bad. Largely because we've still got these unresolved concave corners. So just my gut hunch though tells me that that having a 4-sided face will probably work a little bit better than having a 5-sided face. So maybe I'll go ahead with this. I guess in the back of my mind I'm thinking there's what we have here. If I go back to smooth mode, we have two star points right by each other, So a star point has the 5 edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't know that I necessarily need to have these right next to each other. Maybe I do. It's been a while since I've done this tutorial, but let's go ahead and then later on we can come back and see if there's a way we can combine this so there's only one star point, because it's always ideal to have the minimum number of star points because it just makes your surface smoother. But in the meantime, let's go on. And now that I've got this leg connected, the last thing I need to do is connect the chair arm with the body of the chair. So again, the thing that makes the most sense to do is bridge to fill in this gap. And so far, every time we've bridged, we've had the same number of faces on both sides of the bridge. But here we have one edge that we're bridging to 1, 2, 3 edges. And that's actually possible. The way the bridge command works is the number of edges on the one side needs to be a multiple of the edges on the other side. So since everything's a multiple of 1, you can always bridge one edge to a multiple of edges. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. Here's my preview, and I'll hit enter again. So now I've got this all bridged together. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to go to smooth mode, see what it's looking like. It's looking a little bit better. Still some crazy stuff going on here. But let's go ahead and see if we can finish out the model and close it up and see if any of that will clean up and look better. So, okay, we're left with this edge needing to go to kind of a crazy jagged thing over here. Now it's hard for me to believe that this will look good if we just weld this, bridge that to each other. I guess we can go ahead and look at it. I've actually never looked to see what this will look like, but let's take a look. So we'll do a bridge, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, that filled it up. I think it looks kind of weird, but honestly, maybe not as bad as I would have thought it would. Let's undo that though, and there's a way we can clean this up that will make it a little bit nicer. If we turn on our vertices and grab this vertex and weld them down here, let's see what that will look like. So weld points, grab this point, weld them down here. So now what that's done is it's created just, instead of all that jaggedness, there's just kind of a C shape here, and that will be a little bit better for me to do this bridge to. So let's try that bridge one more time now. So we need to go back to edges, this edge to these 4 edges. Go ahead and hit enter, and you can see that's a much cleaner bridge. Now I've got everything hooked together, and you can see there's none of those crazy like in the past there were kind of really sharp creases going through the model. There's no creases left because there's no sharp corners, but you can see the model still looks a little pinched in some places. And if we run the make uniform command by right clicking on this button, hopefully that will look a little bit better. Let's see what it does. Okay, so you can see that really spaced things out quite a bit better. Let me undo and redo that so you can see kind of what happened. So here's before we'd made uniform. You can see things are kind of pinched. Now if we do the make uniform command, it will really space things out a lot better. And with things spaced out like this, we can still go in and edit our T-Spline, which is really why we're using T-Splines in the first place, is to be able to edit the model once we have it all hooked together. So we can grab these curves and play with the contours of our model. One other thing I'm just going to double check is to see if we have some T-points or star points in our model. So if I left click on edit layout, then it shows me what are T-points and what are star points. So in general, T-points are just smoother than star points, but we can't always have T-points. Here also we have some red stars that are with an arrow pointing out that are trying to be both T-points and star points. So if I hit this auto repair, it should take those red stars away. And let's see what that leaves us with. Okay, that's a model that looks much more well behaved. So we can adjust it however we'd like to. So now that I've made half of my model, what I can do is come in and apply symmetry to it. So let's see. Before I apply symmetry, I want to make sure that all the control points are lined up along this world axis. So I'll turn on, actually I can just even select my edge and then run the Rhino, let's see, set points works. If we set them all in the X direction, and we can just even type 0, then we'll make sure those are all aligned. They're on the border. Then I can apply symmetry. So let's see, where's my symmetry command? Select the T-Spline. We want to again apply X symmetry, hit enter. And now the T-Spline is modeled across the symmetry axis. So anything I do on the one side will be updated on the other side. To this point, my T-Spline model is surface. We can really easily turn this into a solid model by using the thicken command. And there's two different options for thicken. One is to crease the edges of the T-Spline. So if I click crease edges equals no and change that to yes, then now I can either do this manually or type a distance. I'll type a distance. Let's see what 2 does. 2 looks pretty good. And then I just use my mouse to show the direction of how I want it thickened. So if I move it up here, hit enter, then it will thicken this T-Spline. I think it will turn off symmetry. Yeah, symmetry is turned off, but now you can see this is a solid model, but it's still a T-Spline. So I can still, if I want to get a variable radius here, or a variable thickness, I can just move the different parts of the T-Spline. This thicken command does not give you a constant thickness, nor does it guarantee that the model won't self-intersect. So depending on how big it is, we can probably look around and see if there's self-intersections. I don't actually see any self-intersections on this one. But if we throw a clipping plane on this, let's see. We can see what the thickness looks like. So you can see it's a pretty constant thickness, but it's just offsetting each control point. So where there's more control points, there'll be a more constant thickness. Let's undo the thicken command and see the other way that we can thicken the T-Spline, which is to not have it creased. And we can do that. Let's see, where's that thicken command? By saying crease edges no, and again I'll do it 2. Oops, not 23, 2. And we'll say we want it to go this direction. And this will give me just a soft edge to the model. And so you can see there's just a soft edge everywhere. And let's see, we can change the tessellation settings by going to the T-Splines options, changing it to high, and then hitting OK, and that will give us a better display mesh that's smoother. So we can just leave the T-Spline like that. I mean, maybe that's too smooth of an edge. So one thing you can do is insert an edge with T-Splines, and that will tighten things up. So if I select an edge here, and then go select edge ring, this will select all of the edges in that edge ring, which will go all the way across that main part of my model. If I then use the T-Splines insert edge command and go insert type simple, and maybe I'll just even type in, I can either mouse over here to say where I want it inserted, or I can maybe just type like 0.5 to have it insert right in the middle. Then by adding this extra ring or this extra edge loop into my model, it will really tighten that up. So you can see if we change the shading a little bit, that gives something that's, I mean, really almost kind of like a radius to that, that's a little bit tighter than what we started out with. So you can continue to add additional edges to your model to get that tightened up however you'd like it. And the important thing to remember is this is always a T-spline, so we can still go through and edit it and make updates. Finally, one of the benefits of T-splines is that it's compatible with NURBS. So at any point in the process, then we can convert this to NURBS and do other Rhino commands on it. So if, for instance, we wanted to cut a hole out of the model, then maybe if we want a big circle hole cut out, then all we do is just put that in there, then use the trim command, select that circle, and then select the T-spline that we want to have trimmed out. And what it will do is we'll automatically convert the T-spline to a NURBS, and then it will be an exact conversion, and then after the trim you have a polysurface with that exact hole in it. So that's kind of the way to get exactness out of your T-spline. And again, this is the same shape that we had modeled, only now it's converted to NURBS. So as far as a workflow goes, you'll want to stay in T-splines as long as you can and then convert to NURBS at the end to do the trimming. One thing, if I just undo this, that I always like to do is before I convert to NURBS, I always want to make a new layer and say something like final T-spline, then select the T-spline, make a copy of him to this layer, turn off that layer, and then go ahead and trim this. So that way, if I do the trim, then trim the T-spline, and later on decide, oh wait, I really wanted to edit that T-spline, then I can just turn back on this other layer, go ahead and make those edits, and then go ahead and retrim that model. One other thing is this T-spline will go to downstream to any other modeling package beautifully. So if you wanted to go to SolidWorks or Pro-E, and if you want to thicken it using their tools, you could just export this model as a surface or a solid. And I've never heard any reports of T-spline models that have not been completely watertight as they've gone to other programs downstream. So you could have exported this as an IGES or a step and read it into other other CAD programs, and pushing T-splines data downstream like that works really well. So that's the chart tutorial. Hopefully it was helpful. Again, we just used a lot of basic commands to make the T-spline. The tricky part was sewing up these different edges, and we introduced some new commands like bridge or weld, merge edges, unweld edges, fill hole to kind of show different techniques as far as how to connect the different parts of the T-spline together. So hopefully that was helpful. Please post comments or questions down below if you have any, and we'll use those as we improve other tutorials. Thanks. Bye.